Well, man, how's it been going? I have not barely touched the game today. I know you've been playing for quite a while. How has the patch affected your plans?
Uh, I think there's always solutions to things. I think like we kind of knew a big Dura patch was coming, right? Like we knew that we were gonna get. I think I have like the build Nerf tag on every single YouTube video I've uploaded for a guide so far, and that's been consistent.
Yeah.
Um, but there's already a fix for temporalis, so like the infinite blink stuff, there's like infinite loops that already exist now. That don't crash your instance that are like guaranteed. So doesn't really change anything, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That latest build that you put out, I think it was like 11, 12 days ago. I watched it for the first time a few days ago, the Temporalis Auto Bomber. Man, it
Ooh.
hurt my eyes. I don't know how you play those builds for any length of time, dude. It's crazy.
I was talking to my partner about this because she like I also like played PoE2 with her, like just to like walk through things and like just check out what it was like. And she was like, oh, she walked the first time, she's like, it's so gross, everything's disgusting. I'm like, I've never seen the things you're pointing out, like the grime or like the fucking whatever's on the floor or like a dead zombie. I think like when you play a lot of video games from like a really young age, it's like my brain has rotted, so I don't like see the graphics, It's just like
Yeah.
I see the number, I see the skill, maybe the skill effect, and that's about it. And then the
The
rest of it's
first
like the loot filter.
Yeah, the first time you played PoE2, I think it was at the March playtest of last year in LA. Was that the first time?
Yeah.
Even then, were you still, it's obviously a whole bunch of people, their first touch of Path of Exile 2. Were you already thinking, like, okay, how can I make this busted build? You were not paying attention to all the different parts of it, like you said, environments, the monsters, all that stuff?
We can did. I didn't really like play that. I guess like I was hanging out with Alec, right?
Yeah.
Me, Alcazer, and Mathil were sitting together, and we were just like hanging out and just at the very, very back. And like we were playing through it, and I was mostly just trying to like kind of giving the game like an honest shot. But we were mostly
Yeah.
watching what other people were doing from our vantage, and it was interesting to watch like a lot of the people that clearly have never played Path of Exile before. Like just mostly journalist invites, I guess. Come in and they had a really different experience, I guess, right? And it was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of that, dude, a perfect segue. Thank you so much. I was going back into the earliest days of your channel and I did a little bit of Googling and I saw that you used to write for a gaming website, like an esports website about Path of Exile.
Um, I Yeah, I used to write. I did some stuff in like because I was gonna go back in like 2016 or something. Are
Yeah,
you American?
I am. Yes.
Okay, so in
Midwest.
Canada we have this thing called the Score, which is kind of like ESPN, and
Yes,
I
I
wanted
have
to
heard.
go write for them. So I remember I went in for the interview back in like 15 or 16, and their starting salary was like $37,000 something to live in Toronto, which is like
Mm,
not really covering the cost of rent kind of thing. And I remember thinking at the time like, yeah, it's never gonna be it. But before that, like I was been trying to build up some degree of a portfolio because I was like, like esports is cool. I don't want to game anymore. I want to do something kind of adjacent maybe. So yeah, I did a lot of like League of Legends writing stuff because it was after I retired.
yeah, I saw you played for Complexity.
Yeah, yeah.
Why did you choose League of Legends versus Dota? I'm a Dota 2, or I used to be a big Dota 2 player back in my childless days, and I just watch very casually now, but what drew you to League instead of Dota? I'm kind of curious.
I think it's like luck the draw, right? Like you just do what your friends do. I think when you're younger, a lot of
Okay.
times, and I'm not. I'm like just happy to hang out with people. I think when I was young, and I
Yeah.
don't really care. And then
Did you ever
eventually,
play
just
Dota
like
2?
I played for the first time last year. There were quite a few like pros in my chat watching. I guess like because like a lot of pros watch play PoE and then like they
Yep.
just dabble, and it was really really bad. Like I don't think I've ever been made fun of as much as I did during that Dota 2 stream ever. And I was being coached by Alec at the same time, who's like he's like okay, I think he's like the highest rank.
Yeah.
Um, and he was very unhelpful, extremely
Really?
unhelpful. So that was fun.
Really? Did you play with real people or were you doing bot matches?
I did bot matches to start. After that, it was definitely not bot matches. I was getting farmed, man. Like immediately, it was nuts. It's a cool game. I would play it, but I think like it's hard to actually like find the time, especially the older you get to like get into a game, right? So
Oh,
yeah.
100%. That's why I don't play anymore. And sometimes your 1 hour or your 30-minute session turns into a 2 hour, 2.5 hour game. Oh my gosh. That used to be the absolute shit when I was like 14, 15 years old. When we play
Mm.
until like 5 a.m. Oh, it was very fun. I got to dig up that stream though. That sounds pretty fun to watch. So
No, no, no. Hope it's gone.
well, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, the journalist thing that I saw, it was an interview with Chris Wilson back in like 2015, 2016, which was crazy to see. It wasn't a live interview or anything. It was just a whole bunch of questions that you sent his way. I was
Mm.
curious, just before we get into the current day Path of Exile 2 stuff, knowing what you know now, having created content for so long about, builds and the general state of Path of Exile, what one or two questions would you ask Chris Wilson right now if you could, if you had the opportunity?
Hmm.
I know that's a pretty big ask. A lot of people are wondering.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of hard. I think back in the day, because I think about the takeaways from that interview. The one thing that I remember was what he thought was dangerous at the time, and for
Yep,
him,
it was
that's really
talking
the
about
right
defenses
direction.
and danger. You're 100%. Yep,
Like
yep.
scaling that at the same time. I think these days though, it's like clearly that's gone really out of hand. I think what I'm more interested in is like, what is the vision for balance? Like, how do they see skill balance in this game? How do they see balance across different classes, different senses? Because I think in a PvE game, the idea of balance is one that if you choose to engage in the debate in such a way, you can just say, hey, we're fighting monsters. It's easy to beat the game in whatever way, or you don't, or you experience it. So it's not relevant. Like, go kick rocks. But at the same time, like, we're human and we see what's around us and we have a comparative lens to all the builds that we're able to engage with. So then skill balance does affect, I think, how people see. I think, like, Harden loves to play melee. I love to play melee too, actually, but over and over again, it's like much weaker. Not in PoE2, but in PoE1, there's such a big
Mhm.
discrepancy between like melee and non. Bone Shatter aside, so I think like even when you really want to do something, having such a big discrepancy in power and having the game feel less fun because, I mean, you have eyes, right? That can be kind of difficult. So I'm wondering what they're always feeling, how they want to tune the sliders, how much adjustment they want to do, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Uh,
that's great. I think another interesting topic to really touch on a little bit that's related to that is the entire definition of fix versus nerf. And I know that's something that you might have some disagreements with them on, because I know they just had they just went on the pod with DM and Ghazi, and they were talking about, yeah, we fixed some builds that obviously weren't supposed to be, operating as intended, but they were still very strong. I think I'm
mm,
thinking of cast on crit, cast on freeze, a few other things. How were
yeah.
those builds operating immediately after? I've seen some of the stream clips and a few extended segments. Were they, busted into the ground 99% crap, as, a lot of people probably saw those clips or, repeated that? Or were they like mediocre, but not something that you would actually want to play at the end game? Because you want to play the most powerful stuff, right?
Yeah. Have some crit. Did you play much during like the first week? I know you were really busy at the time, but like on before the first patch, you get to play.
I I did, but I
Yeah,
I went completely blind, no prep. I was just going
yeah.
through very slow. So it was like games journalist level. It was that guy who released like, oh, it took me 40 hours to get through the first three
Like
acts.
Hodge Gamer 2
That
or
was
something.
literally me. Extra life. That was me, Jung. So I didn't get to endgame that fast, but I knew there were a lot of crazy things going on, especially with cock. So
I thought on release Cock was balanced like really
okay.
well in the most uninteresting way. It had an internal cooldown of I think 1.16 seconds, so the same as PoE1. I'm pretty sure that was hard coded in.
Hmm.
So it was all about getting as much energy as you could, regardless of what it was. Um, Post patch, they added all the power calculations and everything, right? Where like now it's like if you hit a unique monster, you get 20 times more energy. And a white monster, there's like much worse things because element threshold per monster is also really different. The multipliers for element threshold are really different for unique monsters.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, what happened post patch was if you're playing cast on crit in any sort of usable way pre patch, you couldn't do a map after, but you could one shot a boss. Like
Okay.
I have this thing right now, like with a lot of builds I'm playing right now and just like testing out different interactions each day. It's the constant same problem. You can't actually kill a single white monster, but on bosses you're hitting like I'm not exaggerating. Like I fight a white monster, I literally ripped a white monster last time on hardcore, and I could one shot every boss in the game.
Wow.
So it's like interesting. They still haven't really. I think that's like what their idea for cock is. The more I hear about the nerf, it's like these meta gems are meant to be like a utility supplement that doesn't
Right.
require an extra button for bosses. That's my
Okay.
general understanding, but I don't know what their vision is there. So on the flip side, we just have things like cast on dodge, temporalis, which break the game entirely. But
Mhm.
that's because it solves the one problem, which is how do you clear?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, you bring up a good point where maybe they want people to invest greatly in a cock setup and sacrifice a lot of defensive buffs or the like with Spirit? Because what's the investment in Cock? I have not touched the gem at all. Is it a high investment, like 60 plus Spirit or something crazy?
It's 100. I mean, like, what's
Okay.
the defensive investment for Spirit, or like what's the defensive? Like, what are our options defensively for Spirit?
I'm
Grim
playing
Feast,
a
I guess.
monk, so I'm playing an invoker. So I
Yeah,
basically have I have Herald of Thunder, and then the rest of
yeah.
my auras are just defensive. So there's like the Ghost Dance one from Path of
Oh
Exile
yeah,
one,
Ghost is
integrated into
good.
PoE2, and then the Wind Dancer one. So it helps me. But I know
Yeah,
maybe
right.
at the high end that kind of takes to the wayside as you try to feed in other stuff. Like I know there's a lot of spirit based stuff in the Invoker Ascendancy that you can sacrifice defenses for more damage and the like. So I'm assuming that's what happens, as you build up those
Yeah.
defenses in other ways.
I mean, I guess like martial is different. Martial weapon. It's really weird how they did that because like go or wind dancer is nice.
Mhm.
There's actually wind dancer auto bombers right now as well. That can
Okay.
like do stuff like that and through them out. But or I guess it's been nerfed now. But wind dancer is like only martial weapon, right? So like as a caster, if you're playing like wand or scepter, like you're already limited your options. You have grim. You don't really
Mhm.
have ghosts because it's just not worth it, I think. And then it's just grim, right? As a supplement. And 30 spirit you can get off anywhere, especially in trade league. It's like a helmet corruption or
Yeah.
scepter offhand is like plus almost 200 spirit.
Mhm.
With an offhand scepter, so it's like really ridiculous. I just don't think like I would love to have more defensive options like we do in PoE1 for like spirit reservation, but we really don't. I think.
Right. Do you think a lot of those are I think it might be obvious that the game is unfinished and there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that are going to be coming into the game with like the druid, the templar. I bet they're going to bring in a bunch of defensive auras, or this is just me hoping that is the case. And if it's not the case now, I think a lot of people are playing exactly what you're saying. Like we just want more options in the game. We don't want to be cornered into this one area that is the best for caster builds, which are I know you said you liked melee. Are
Yeah.
casters and like auto bombers your favorite? I feel like that's what you always build in Path of Exile. You make something that's super broken where you can just explode the entire screen with almost no
Um,
effort by the time you finish putting a ton of effort into the build.
Interesting. That's the perception. I think there's two components
Hey,
to
hey,
that.
I see clips and I watch your videos. I don't watch the full streams. So
No, I don't mean in terms of me, in
yeah.
terms of the builds. The
Oh,
first thing is
okay.
that the first side is that like I think it's much easier to construct casters for the most part in
Okay.
like video games for them like just in general.
Yeah.
Like for some reason the way that spell scaling tends to go like eliminates a lot of variables, things like accuracy. PoE2 has a really bad thing of are you playing Mace?
I'm playing quarterstaff
Yeah.
on
Did you play
monk,
Mace
yeah.
on your SF character
I am
before?
playing Mace on my hardcore solo self-found character, yes.
Yeah. Did you try Volcanic yet?
I
Or
have
what
not.
Molten Walls,
No.
whatever?
I'm like level 9. I'm getting
Oh,
there.
okay.
I'm getting there.
The molten steel is like an abomination. Oh, I guess like rolling slam, things like that. They just
Yep.
force you to move, and those things are like an abomination. But like, there's a lot of things with attack skills I think really make it complicated. And then when you
Mhm.
get to the math of attack scaling, it's also hard to do. Whereas the tree for casters is intuitive. It's always like spell damage, crit. There's
Mhm.
one or two mechanics you can leverage, so I think it's easier to make those builds. But I think the second component is I've been spending a lot more time on PoE2 on Billy, just like one of the Chinese video
Oh, yeah.
sites,
Yep.
and there's basically this conundrum. It's either you play a build that has a lot of damage, that's a stacker, and then the other solution where people are interested in content is you play a build with infinite damage, like in a literal sense, and it's not worth doing anything else. So if you haven't found a new infinite damage loop, then it's almost not worth like talking about in terms of how
What
they scale.
can you go into that? What's an infinite? Because I don't know what you mean by that. What do you mean by an infinite damage loop?
Before we were playing like oh you saw the temporalis thing. That was one
Yep.
example.
Yep.
The one that got popularized 2 weeks ago was there's a curse support called Burning Inscription, and it makes a burning ground. For some reason, that has a trigger rate about 5 times higher than comparable ignites.
Okay.
And then if you use Gemling, you can put 2 support gems in. So then you have a Burning Inscription also with a triggered curse and cast Ignite. And because it's not a skill, it's a support, it can generate energy.
Okay.
So as long as
Okay.
the energy generation is greater than the cost it takes to trigger the next skill, you end up with a loop. And
Right.
then if it's more on the axis, like if it's let's say you need 100 energy and you gain 105 over the
Yeah.
ticks, that means the damage will scale infinitely, right? Like 10 seconds in, maybe you're doing 200 damage per second, and then 30 seconds in, you're doing 40,000, and then your instance crashes if you don't do enough. Yeah.
So
So
fascinating, man. No, that's
I think that's
crazy.
like their whole mentality, which I like. I think it's like why settle, you know?
That's interesting. So they try to go, it's infinite damage. They're trying to scale up to the point of not crashing the instance, essentially. right?
Yeah.
That's wild. What is there? I'm curious now. If you're reading opinions on Bilibili, are they enjoying PoE2? What is their reception similar to like the Western community, like Reddit, our Twitch communities, YouTube, and the like?
I can't read Chinese, so
Oh, you're just seeing the videos. Jeez,
yeah.
dang it. Now I'm curious, dude. Now I want to. Now I want to know because I know they have some. They have some killer memes as I've been seeing the past few days as people are looking at Red Note and the like. So, okay, note for later. So now I'm a little curious about the differences between Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2 build creation. And I'm really focusing on builds because I feel like that is exactly your forte, man. Um, your channel is filled with ridiculous interactions throughout both games so far. How do you come up with these build ideas? You just sit like you do on stream, you sit there, you test interactions right now in Path of Exile 2 because we don't have like a POB. And then with Path of Exile 1, do you just sit in POB, test a whole bunch of stuff, go into the game, try it out?
PoE2 is weird. I think like at the start of PoE2, we were thinking be normal, like as much as possible, like trying to find like generic scalars, do what you can.
Yeah.
And then as PoE2's come out, I think like there's a realization, like a great humbling, realizing that it's such a new game and rules don't apply. Most of the bug fixes to the most recent patch had to do with wording not meaning wording. Tags were missing. Tags existed but weren't written. Functions missing. There's still a missing tag actually that's responsible for a new infinite loop this patch that I'm gonna be playing with. So in that sense, a lot of rules don't apply, and a lot of it is just like keeping your eyes peeled and looking at what's available. So actually, most of the builds I'm playing like aren't my builds. I had one build. Okay, as far as like, it's like you think of something like a bow hand of wisdom and action character that was using ball lightning. There's like elements of that which I was like the first person pioneer, like more like not maybe not pioneer popularized because you don't know what people are doing, right? But like the first I'm seeing it is like yeah, like for example, Orb of Storms didn't work with lightning rod. A lot of people were like Orb of Storms doesn't work with lightning rod, and it doesn't. For some reason, if you link chain support with it, which doesn't actually change the function by the way, because it can already chain, it starts to work with lightning rod. It can trigger all the little arrows on the ground and kind of give you like 10 times damage, let's say.
Yeah.
So some of it is like looking at something that's adjacent and asking myself like what was their intention, what does the script say right now in terms of what that is, what is the possibility that what their intention is doesn't line up with what's on the text, and that what's on the text doesn't line up with what is actually working. In PoE1 though, it was like I think it's just easier in a lot of ways because we have such a base of knowledge. When it's all incremental, you're looking at one or two things, you find it's not about like a new class or ascendancy. It's how can we make a special interaction that no one's thought about before? What is the least used thing? I think the most recent thing that was really different that I made was Arcanist Brand with Eye of Winter.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically projectiles like Arcanist Brand had the tag that said like it's got max distance, which is not on anywhere else in the game. And because of that, Eye of Winter previously couldn't return, but if you linked it to that and then put projectile speed over 176, it could start returning. And it was like things like that, right? So like looking where people aren't looking and then just trying to find that. But otherwise, like it's not like a strength, I would say. I like to make a lot of builds, but
Yeah.
my optimization is pretty weak. And efficiency wise, it's like what I consider acceptable, but I think like the best tier build makers are much more efficient than me in terms of how they like solve their puzzles. Yeah.
You have a great memory and you can explain these pretty well. For someone like myself, I'm not a build creator. I I rarely understand all the functions and everything that are going on in POB. I just used POB for the first time ever, like
Oh, that's
earlier
cool.
this year. Yeah, I had never touched it before, but people were encouraging me to, and I did learn a lot of stuff there. And I started to learn how all these different tags interact with each other. And I have appreciated how in Path of Exile 2, it does seem a lot more intuitive to do these things in game as opposed to relying on a third party tool. Do you feel that way as they fix the game more and more and they add the proper tags and the proper descriptions and everything? Do you think people will be able to experiment in game with the gem system and with everything available to them instead of relying on these other tools, even though of course they're going to be there for those people who want to use them?
Path of building's never been important.
Yeah.
In PoE1, it's not important either.
Can you say that
Um,
louder, Jung? Can you say it?
I mean, just think about it though, right? Like, what
Yeah.
is it? What does it really change? Like, we all
Bro,
can see what 10% means,
bro.
right? And POB, the nice thing is I was talking to local identity was at the March event as well, right?
He might have been. There were so many people. I don't know.
Oh no, maybe it wasn't. No, he wasn't. Okay, well, local identity was. I guess I DM'd him a while back, and he was
Yeah.
talking about how everything they do in POB is not automated. Every single thing they do is manual. Every calc. So, there was an issue with something a while back. I forgot some sort of fire skill which didn't calc correctly based on. It was this. The taming Frostblaze of Catabasis is a cold skill. It
Mhm.
has a dot portion that's not a spell; it's melee. But it's not an attack. And taming says increase elemental damage of attacks or something that's conditional. For some reason, in POB it interacted together. It's
Okay.
50-50 whether or not it worked in game. In game, we tested it; it didn't work. And then local identity messaged me was like, "Yeah, we tested this. This part does work. This part doesn't. So on, so on." And then they write that into the code manually. The whole tool is just based on testing interaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like. You can kind of do everything in game. It's obviously a huge pain, but every time we want to test something really different, it's a huge pain. I'm sitting in Chimeral Wetlands every day, pulling one monster over to see like how many wither stacks something can apply, right? And like that's really frustrating. Like they should just
Yeah.
give us a target dummy. I don't really understand. Like the game is new, so test things out, fix them early, get the bugs like gotten rid of, and then but then instead of kind of obfuscating things with like, oh, just go into combat, kind of see what happens. All that ends up with is like I think a really big bowl of spaghetti code for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the target dummy, is that something that you're very pro for PoE2?
What do you feel about it?
I mean, for my purposes,
Yeah.
I don't think it would be very useful for because I'm not testing a whole bunch of interactions. I
Mm.
don't see many cons against it though, especially since we have damage numbers in game now, and we can
Right.
just
Right.
go to a big stationary boss that we know is always going to be targetable, and we can go test that stuff out on them. I don't see a real con against it. I think they even said it themselves. Like, I think they were asked like, "Well, what's wrong with having a target dummy?" And they were thinking, I don't know. I don't actually know if there's a problem with it. I
Mm.
wonder if it's just maybe taking people out of the fantasy of the game and just going in your hideout and testing damage. But people already do that, like you said, with a lot of extra steps. Pulling one,
Yeah.
that sounds like hell, dude. Pulling one monster from a pack to try to test stuff out in interactions, like, that's rough.
We just gotta do it. I think like
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's like a lot of people think I'm really toxic, and that's not untrue. But I would say it's selective when it comes to builds. I have
Okay.
like one massive pet peeve. It's
Okay.
like never make a statement, an objective state, like never make a statement of fact, an objective statement of fact that is objectively untrue. I don't
Okay.
care if someone says I like this or I think this is great or I think or like I watched some of videos today that were like and like people in maps they say like tier 6 mapping they have like 5k DPS. Still interesting, it's fun to watch. But
Yeah.
when someone says something like this is the strongest fire skill or this is better than this or this works this way, that's the most annoying. This works this way and it doesn't. My God, that's why the rigor is worth it, right? Because then you can ensure that you have to stress test everything someone says. Like every single thing. Even yesterday, I was asking about Elemental Storm. They actually added a patch note. I'm 100% sure they changed something last night because it was added as an addendum at the bottom.
Yeah.
But Elemental Storm was generating energy. But people were saying like, oh, it doesn't. It's trigger
And now
skill.
it's
It doesn't.
not.
It doesn't. It's not now, but before the patch it was. Even though people thought it wasn't before the patch because of how they thought about the skill. But it was missing a tag, and it functioned differently, and it actually had cool interactions. But just like all about rigor, right? Because people will just say shit. You just need to verify everything yourself. It's like if you don't see video of it, can you really trust it?
Yeah, you definitely put in the legwork with your builds, right? And you post them after you've done all of this research. That's essentially what it is. It's a whole bunch of testing, failing, succeeding, then you finally post the build. And you do so in a way I think that speaks to quite a few people. You're very direct with your style of delivering your builds and everything. Is that
Mhm.
something that you've really fine-tuned over the past 3-4 years of making Path of Exile content, or is that something that you knew that you wanted to do once you jumped in and started making stuff? Like you saw, I don't know if I thought you were leaning in, like laughing, but no, you were just
Mm.
adjusting. I was like, is that something
I'm
that you
thinking.
saw missing from the community and you wanted to try to fill that void, or that's just your style?
When you came into PoE and started making a lot more content over the past
Yeah.
like 2 years, I'm sure, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I would prefer if you correct me if I'm inaccurate. You saw like a dearth of a certain type of content, like editorial content that focused on describing the game, thinking about the game, just more conversational, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did almost no build stuff. I put out
Yeah.
like a chieftain infernal blow for Trial of the Ancestors, and I
Yeah.
failed horribly. But yeah, just commentary and everything. That's what I stayed
You
in.
saw it, and then you're not thinking like, is what's my like? I think there's probably degrees in which you're watching on content, but a lot of it's like this is who you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think
I think
that's
for me,
accurate.
and I probably had a similar experience then in like I guess like before Expedition, so 1.5, 2.15, that's like 3 years
Okay.
ago now. I like didn't really make any content or anything because I don't really care. Like I honestly didn't really think of content creator stuff until probably the past half year. I just like to share builds and share videos.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was already playing the same thing every league. It was the idea that I play softcore trade, 2 to 3 days. I like to get my head under on the first day, farm 2 or 3 more 4 days, and then stop playing the league. But I remember having this huge peeve, this two-fronted peeve. One was that I felt like people had these 30-minute videos that I was like interested in their build, and they would just start talking, and there was no substance there. And the second was that the builds were just bad, I guess. So then I wanted to just like share things to try to like raise the standard. And there's obviously just this caveat. There's obviously gonna be things that are always gonna be better than what I do, and always gonna be like there's always that. It's not like I
Yeah.
think like what I'm playing is best. I just think it's a certain standard that I wouldn't like reach below because I think it's a low floor. It's like relatively low for content. Um, but the other side is like during my masters, before I went into like my PhD, there was this guy called Jordan, and my roommate and I were like hanging out. We were in a seminar, and we were talking to this guy, and he was really smart for sure. He's like a prof at U of T now, and great guy, super interesting. But my friend was talking about how like he's like a machine, and we were
Okay.
kind of just like musing back and forth. We were like really high, and we were talking about like how he talks, and we realized that he uses very very few words that aren't necessary. Anytime that 4 words can become one, it was being done. It was a very natural flow for him, and I became very admiring of that. I think.
Yeah.
But as a streamer, you just fucking yap all day. It's like you're like 8 hours. Who cares what you say, right? It's better to just fill the noise. Yeah.
I get that too. One big one that I know a lot of people rely on all the time is like inserting that constantly into writing. And I started trying to remove that from all my writing, all of my speech and everything, where there's a lot of cases where you don't
Interesting.
need that word and you always add it in just for no real reason, just because okay, other people generally use this. I've tried to do that so hard. And that's what I really appreciate about that style of video, that it is so to the point and it is showcasing the build. Because honestly, I don't have a low attention span. I'll sit, I'll watch a video essay, I'll listen to a long podcast, I'll be able to focus. But
Yeah.
when consuming something like Path of Exile content and people showcase, okay, here's the spreadsheet, here's the PUB, here's all this other information, it's a 45-minute video,
Yeah.
I'll probably dip. I will, because that's not necessarily how I play the game. Like I said, I just touched PoB for the first time. I've been playing since 2019, and I didn't use PoB at all. I was just playing based off vibes, and sometimes I would like pull up. I used to take screenshots of people's passive skill trees from the PoE website. Like I remember pulling like a Mathil build one time. And I'd go onto his character and I'd
We saw the
screenshot it, and
website.
as I league started, I'd have it up on my other monitor. I mean, ooh,
Actually,
those were some jank days.
nothing wrong with that. I mean, I guess things change too, so it's actually better to like archive that, right?
Yeah, yeah, fun
Someone asked me
times.
earlier, like, yeah, if I have I have no functional characters right now in softcore because every single one is a test spot right now for me. Like, because I just like scrap them all and just like play around with them. So if you're trying to copy a build of mine by like importing a character, you know that you can import anyway. But if you could, it really wouldn't work for you. You would get some weird like a character I've made to do exactly 1 damage and apply like
Yeah.
just with it.
Well, when I was a complete noob, before I even touched YouTube, oh, you would have hated me. I used to I used to look at PoE Ninja and I'd like show my friends those crazy DPS builds and I'd be like, I don't understand how this is happening. How is this viable? And of course, it's someone who's just breaking the PoE Ninja system, and me, little old me playing in Conquerors of the Atlas and the like thought it was actually real. Yeah, it's
Just
not
like
real.
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Nonsense.
now.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's why like I get like when grinding gear is like really reluctant or just like not reluctant but cautious as opposed to like numbers, testing, all that stuff. Like, do they want to reduce the game down to just bare bones? Because like there is that it's definitely fallacious to think of it that way in terms of just a snowball. That
Mm.
like one of I guess infinite regress, right? Where eventually everything's just like you're a dot, this number, you hit, you dodge.
Mm-hmm.
But we're so far from there. I don't think it's a legitimate risk.
Yeah.
There's people that will always think and talk that way, but as long as
Oh
the
yeah.
game is like fun to play and there's engaging elements, it's never going to be that stripped down.
Well,
So target dummy, you know.
I'm curious about that now. I know we focused on builds for quite a bit. The game being fun to play. Jung, how are you enjoying Path of Exile 2? Is it fun?
It's hard. Okay, it's it's like a solid 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Right now,
Dude,
in terms of
same
pure
score.
enjoyment.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That checks out. I think if anyone says it's a 10, like they're insane. I think if anyone says it's below a 5, they just don't like ARPGs.
Havoc said it was a 10 a month ago. I was like, bro, come on. You can't say that, dude. What's going on? Come on. He loves it.
I don't know if Havoc sees a lot. He's an opportunist, right? He's like, he sees something and he sees a set of constraints and he goes, okay, this is the game. Like metaphorically speaking, how do we play it? I think that's cool.
Sorry for interrupting you though. The 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Go.
Why are you talking? What are your points like? What are your deductions? Because I guess there's like, or how do you think about it? I guess.
All right. So I see the game it's truly 2 parts, but I'm classifying it as 3 right now because all I can do is rate the game as it's currently created. We have the campaign, which I classify as acts 1 through 3. We have Cruel, which is campaign 2.0, which is going to be removed, and that's why I kind of take it out of my rating at the end of the day. And then we have the end game. I think the current campaign, I think it's a 10 out of 10. I do. Or 9.5 out of 10. Maybe there are some minor things that can be updated in the next few months during early access, but I really enjoyed my campaign experience. I think in Cruel, the game breaks down and it turns, in my opinion, into just a speed fest. Everything's dying. Like I said, I'm not a great build creator. I was just bursting through everything. I didn't feel any challenge. I felt like I was playing a very easy game and it wasn't fighting against me at all. And then an end game, I think it goes down to like at least before this patch, 5 out of 10 maybe. Because for someone who has limited time, I had no idea when I was going to be able to fight the Arbiter of Ash. Everything was RNG based. If I die in a map, I lose everything, which really sucks because I'm going to die in a map. I'm bad. I totally accept that. And my progress just is always uncertain. And it's always just left up to the gods. Like I felt, for the way I play, I never knew if I would actually be able to hit my goals. And my goal for early access was like killing the Arbiter. In Path of Exile 1 leagues, I may get 36 challenges, and I'm going to dip out. I'm going to do one build. I'm going to have fun doing it, and I'm going to dip.
Yeah.
And
36 is a lot.
36. Okay, I go hard. 10 p.m. to like 3 a.m. for the first 2 weeks of the league, and I get those challenges, man. And then I dip out of Path of Exile for until the next league essentially, and I just consume content, make content on it, whatever. But and play that character a little bit. But in Path of Exile 2, at the end game, which I so much loved in Path of Exile 1, all of that is gone. So it brings down this score drastically for me to like a 7 out of 10. I think that's where I'd aim it. I don't know what your opinions are on the campaign, but I really like that play style. And it's so different compared to Path of Exile 1. And I'm fine with the end game eventually turning into something that's similar in terms of speed once you become a god, once you invest greatly and you ingenious your way into that situation. But I think the curve should be a lot flatter than it currently is. I feel like it's just like this if you know what you're doing. And it, like I said, when I hit Cruel, I knew what I was doing. And I just killed everything very quick. Bosses lasted like 3 seconds. And in the end game, it's very similar. Except now I'm at like I'm at the T15, T16, T17. And stuff is fighting back now. But that entire middle section felt bad.
You're playing Monk the whole way, though, right?
Playing Monk. And I have a hardcore warrior, and I played sorceress too, up to act 2.5. Then I ripped on solo self-found hardcore yesterday. Ugh.
Classic. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right?
Dude, I got one shot. It happened.
I think I've never thought about it intertemporally. Like I've thought about the components separately to some degree, as in like campaign feels different for sure.
Yeah.
I think a lot of your experience is probably to do with the build, right? Like because Monk, well, I guess not Monk. Let's say core stuff. I hate how much they're using like warrior. It's like they're clearly talking about maces or left side tree or something.
100% true, but like people, if you put that like in a video, people won't understand. Like, you know what I mean? Like talking about it, people just don't get it, right? I get it. I think you
I
get
keep
it.
saying, why are you playing like Stormweaver? I haven't made a Stormweaver yet, but because they keep seeing Spark on my screen or they keep saying Lightning Arrow, they keep saying Stormweaver Deadeye. It's like I've not touched those sentences.
Wow.
I think Act 1 is strong.
Yeah.
Act 2 is still pretty good. I think Dreadnought's a really weird and specific zone. It's one of those zones that's like a heavy stress tester for your
Oh
build.
yeah. Yeah.
And like I think it shows like a build balance issue. Because some builds are unaffected by the mods, and some builds are you actually can't engage with content. Mosquitoes are a huge problem, for example. They're on the ground, so anything that's ground based can't hit them, right?
Mm.
If you have a burning ground effect and that's your primary damage, you do no damage actually.
Does Spark hit them?
So yeah, Spark is not ground targeted, but
Oh,
then
it's not.
like
Okay. You see, simple brain not
um
thinking. I thinking it's going on like the ground and everything. Okay.
that's right, yeah. No, like
Yeah.
things like burning inscription, bone
Okay.
storm targets the ground, for example. Bone storm hits the ground. That can't hit mosquitoes half the time. You have to aim it very specifically. If you name lock, you'll always miss. So things like that. Act 3 has even more of those problems.
Okay.
But the campaign is solid. I don't know if it's like a 10 for me. I just think that the curbing is really strange. And we started talking about balance, right? I think like if you're on certain skills and certain builds, your experience is so drastically different than others. And I think that's like a little bit. It's just strange, I think, to see the difference. I've played through almost every archetype now except for crossbow. And they just feel so different. And it's like really determined by like that. But the end game is like we probably disagree a lot on what we find painful. Like I like the one portal stuff. The 6 portal content in softcore was really bad meta to have. Like we saw highly efficient players in softcore don't do that. But there's a misconception that they do. And it's very easy to for people to bandwagon on like these narratives, especially on forums like Reddit. It's like, oh, like yeah, it's like more efficient, just like dive your map and play classic. There's enough tools in the game, but you don't need to do that. But I don't like that progression.
I just want I like it in some regards. I think there's too many there's like stacking punishments that make it feel especially bad. Right? I feel like they could remove one of the things that I hated the most, and I didn't realize this was the case, was when you die in a map, you lose your boss, and it's a special encounter. Ooh, that crushed me, man, when I first realized that. I just wonder if there's a few changes they could do to bring it down while also keeping the one death per map because the stakes are cool. I will not lie about that. It makes me lock in. I like being engaged, and I like there being some fear that, oh man, you could really lose something important here aside from just experience loss as it is in Path of Exile 1. But yeah.
Well, when you do die, don't you think it's pretty fast?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Okay. That's the thing as well. So I also am a fan of that slower style of gameplay. So I'd be even more okay with one portal deaths if I knew what was going to kill me or if I felt like my death was deserved. As a monk, like you said, our gameplay experiences are very different based on the class we play. As a monk, not going to lie, 90%, I swear I'm not exaggerating, okay? 90% on death or the occasionally does cold explosions. Okay, I swear.
That is on death. That is like the bears are on death effects. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
I think those. You know, we're in Act 2 before you enter Titan's Grotto or whatever. There's the big dudes that fall on you. There's these falling skeletons, and they have a summoner guy. Yeah. I think that monster is really frustrating. They're really really strong. They kill you easily. But I think that's like a good example of something that fits in a game that's like more to do with what you're describing, right? A slower paced game, you're really punished. You know that that thing's gonna kill you. If you're uncareful, you're gonna die to it because like you want to brute force. But they push you and then they triple hit you if they slam you. But it feels fair the whole time, right? But incredibly punishing. Or like the gorilla for jungle. They nerfed the rule now, so it's a bit better.
Do you agree with those nerfs, Jung?
Sorry?
Do you think those should have been nerfed?
The roll?
The gorilla?
Roll was, well, I mean, all the slams are still doing...
Big
it is 3,000 on the top end right now. 3,400 something like that. So that's more than you'll have on a level 95 character, right? For like unskilled, if you're not like 5 second. So like it's still like that. Like I don't think it's like a freebie or anything.
Right.
But I think like as long as that part of maps, like I guess like in terms of punishment, I would just wonder if you'd necessarily feel the same way if everything was just slower and more reasonable. And our time to kill is such an important metric, you know, like our time to death is so fast. I think like it just feels kind of bullshitty, you know, when you're step in and I've seen some insane rips the past few days that make no sense, and they have mostly have to do with unloaded explosions, textures,
Right.
and pretty much all on death. Yeah.
Let's kill or be killed right now, you know? And if that's changed a little bit, I think I would agree that I'd
Yeah.
be fine with the one and done because I will say I've never played hardcore solo self-found, and I know that you've played a lot of that and you've done like gauntlets and everything. This is my first time playing it ever across like Path of Exile seriously. And
Yeah.
it is a completely different experience. I feel different when I play. There I feel mentally rewarded, you know, when I overcome literally a stupid ass boss like the Devourer. Man, I was
Yeah.
so happy. And when I killed the Act boss on my Sork, you know, I was sweating. I felt like I was fighting the Maven for the first time with the gear I still had from like Act 10 or something, you know, and when I first fought the Maven in Ritual League when it came out. Oh my gosh, it felt so good and it's so rewarding. So I
Yeah.
now see why so many people really die by saying hardcore and solo self-found are just the ways to experience these types of games. I just love it. It's good.
I like having a lot of options for sure. I think like
Yeah.
if normally when I play PoE, it's like I think my life I don't really drop too far below 5 ever. Like life is pretty nice. When I'm playing video games, probably somewhere around like a 7 or 8. But it never really peaks too high above that. But like when I
Yeah.
was fighting Gauntlet Maven, the most recent Gauntlet,
Yeah.
it was like absurd. What they did was I guess in terms of raw difficulty, it's probably about 4 to 8 times harder than our baseline hardcore game. And that was probably the most fun I've ever had playing the game. Like I've
Yeah.
never felt that degree of adrenaline since I was like playing college sports. Like it was just like unreal. Like, and I wish that like they would give us opportunities to have that degree of expression in PoE because it's like it's a mechanic that will kill you once every 2-ish seconds, 2 to 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds, and then that fight goes on for about I think I was in there for like 12 minutes, something
It
like
was
that.
insane, man.
Like I would want to see that. Like if they can kind of have more of that. Arbiter is interesting, but it's more about like the timings are tight, but the reactions are slow and your movement is weak. I in regular combat, I don't mind the slower. For some reason, when it comes to bossing, I really like the hyper fast pace, a bit more twitch based, a bit more reactive. Um, and a little bit more and this might be unpopular, but a little bit more line dancey. Kind of like how
Okay.
MMOs they have very like it's a bit more pattern recognition and repetition, rehearsal. And even despite that, you see people die over and over again, right?
Oh
But I
yeah.
like that. I think like it allows you to have so much room for like expression and beautiful movement.
Hmm.
And yeah. So I'm hoping they kind of bring that in soon.
Especially if it's mixed with that vision of 1 to 3 minute long fights when you're encountering it for the first few times. I like those extended sequences. I really
Make
like
it
the
10,
first
you
one.
know?
Say again?
Make it 10. Make it 10
Make it
minutes.
to
Like
hey, I totally agree with
you
you
do the
because
most.
I feel like that is where they have peaked in this game, from my point of view at least. I think those boss fights are genuinely good. The only
Mm.
thing that lessens them for me is encountering them in Cruel and killing them in 5 seconds and feeling like, wow, that sucked. And then doing it again in maps and at least tiers, honestly, 1 through 15 until I start getting those boss difficulty nodes on the boss
Yeah.
atlas, doing the same exact thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, I know this is a good fight, but I'm just destroying it. I really need to get a character that's not quarterstaff to the end game. I just need to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Ben did the whole basic attack thing for a while. Mace Strike.
Oh,
It's pretty strong though. It's like probably the strongest mace skill for some reason.
that
Sixer.
is kind of wild. Was it dual
Yeah.
wielding or like a two-hander?
Yeah, it's Titans. Yeah, it's 200 with shield.
Two-hander with
Because
shield?
like our defense are so scarce, we're like willing to sacrifice everything for more defense, right? It's kind of absurd.
Right. Okay, well
Yeah.
maybe I'll try something similar. Maybe I'll get there on hardcore solo self-found. It's possible on a warrior of all things. It could happen. Okay, I just got to take it slow. Dude, the difference is so crazy. I played Sork to like 2.5 through halfway through Act 2.
Yeah.
Barely any problems. Warrior right now, every map is a struggle.
Interesting. I was very flipped on that. I was
You
extremely
were.
flipped. Yeah.
I'm in the place with all the blighted creatures, and I
I
almost
don't see
died every
things.
pet because I'm getting the
I
poison
need to read
flying
the
at me, the
description. Blinded
explosions.
creatures.
What?
I don't understand what that means. What
Oh,
do you mean blinded creatures?
they got like the poison pustules on them. It's between the forest and the graveyard. Those creatures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those
like
guys.
Wraithborn or something? Or like I guess the one hunting grounds or something like that? Or
No,
depends.
no. Oh gosh, I can't remember. I
I don't
can't
like
remember the
watch
name.
I don't see like what's actually happening.
Well, I can't. I know the beginning of the conversation. Grim Tangle, that area.
Oh, you're really at the start. I see. I see.
I'm really at the start, man.
Give
Yeah.
yourself some time to play, man. It's like I think it's so much more richness, like to see this game out. Like each playthrough so far has been pretty new. I think like the monster recognition side of it
Yeah.
is gonna be big.
Yeah.
Like in PoE1, we had like 3 different, less than 5 really dangerous monster types: skeleton mages, cannibals. We used to have porcupines. They don't really exist anymore. Um, in terms of like the core game stuff, and I think that's actually it that I can think of right now in terms of like really truly dangerous mobs you have to think about. In PoE2, it's like about half the mob types, right? But, like
Right.
there's some element of you should play better to like, other than just like hit them, walk fast, walk past, don't backtrack. I think
Yeah.
like they like playing through, if you're on HC, pay attention to the monsters, you'll get so much value out of it, you know, and enjoyment, like the
Yeah,
mastery of it.
I really enjoy that. So, and seeing now the difference between first playthrough versus a playthrough now, because they've done a bunch of balance with those monster types too. There were a few patch note changes that I was a little, do I want this to happen? I think one of them was the vulture demon used to
Yeah,
leap, I think like 72 screens away and just do one caw and it would just land on you. And now I think
yeah.
they can only do it a screen away. But I liked it when they came from freaking nowhere and I just heard the caw and I had to dodge. I like that.
Oh, you hear that? Okay, because
I
they're
think you.
bugged in the terrain. You can't hit them.
Oh, they're bugged.
Like, well, I don't know if they're bugged, but you can see them kind of because the terrain, the textures are bugged, so you can
Uh-oh.
see them coming, but you can't actually hit them until they
Oh
jump.
yeah, yep.
It's like
Yeah,
really
in
messed
the
up.
spires of Deshrar map. Yeah, yeah, 100%. That's rough. Those things were terrifying to me. And then the filthy crones. That was the other one where they, if you played melee and you were
Oh,
point blank, they would vomit
yeah,
all over you, and it's instant death. That was super punishing, but it was telegraphed. I had to change the way I played, and it wasn't punishing at all to ranged. I'm on the train of maybe leave those crazy monsters in the game. I like those ones that I will remember. Okay, when I play through on my 20th playthrough in
yeah.
2026, because I'm playing a lot, I'm gonna know. Okay, filthy crones, stay the hell away when they start to gurgle a little bit because you were done. I like that.
Yeah. Those things are, I wonder about the numbers, you know. Sometimes like it's just their calculation is interesting too. The full
Yeah.
shotgun in Act 3, if you have 0 chaos res, you get hit by the full shotgun. I think it's somewhere in the range of like 5,000. Like the numbers are really high. I ran it with a ghost. Oh no, sorry, it's about 3,000. I ran it with a ghost ride character at 50
Okay.
chaos res, and I got hit for 2.5k. So
Oh
it's a
my
lot of
god.
damage. And it's like
Crazy.
that's my hybrid defense. That seems about right.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
why I just classified it as a one shot because it would one shot my monk almost right now.
Yeah, like I don't know how much I like punishing. I think in Diablo 3, do you play D3
I played a little bit of D3, not a lot. No.
on release or ROS or like
I
later?
played Reaper of Souls part way through the campaign. I actually bounced in Act 3 to Path of
Yeah.
Exile because I didn't like the story of Azmodan, and I said, okay, I need something actually dark.
Interesting story.
What's a game like Diablo? Literally in 2019, Diablo like game on Google, and Path of Exile popped up.
Damn.
I know.
Interesting. Okay, early D3, I liked their design. It's
Okay,
like the most unpopular thing ever, but
go for it.
everything would kill you basically. But if you were like a whatever it's called, the Sork or that
The
archetype,
mage or wizard, was it
yeah.
wizard in D3?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Was it
Yeah,
wizard?
they had a thing that like you couldn't be hit for more than 35% of your health, no matter what it was. And I thought about that in terms of design perspective. Like obviously it introduces huge problems, but at the same time, it's like unless there's certain abilities, should they really one shot you? Like, should they really be one shotting you? I get it when you get slammed by like a big thunder thing. I get it when you get hit by, but like you get hit by one detonate dead corpse and you die, or you get hit by like yeah a white mob doing some like the spinning thing is kind of like that's the kind of on the fringe for like I wonder which way I would actually prefer because I kind of agree with you like I like difficulty in that way, but that's kind of like ooh like how much right? It's like can you
Yeah.
outgear it? The opportunity to outgear if you really work on it for those kinds of monsters should be present. I think the opportunity to outgear something like arbiters one shot abilities shouldn't exist, right?
Hmm.
But they have that backwards right now.
Yeah, it's a good thought because man, Act 3 not being able to outgear. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think there's just tuning. Like maybe for if you're going through and you're just going area by area, level 20 area, you're level 20, maybe it is that one-shot capability. But if you really want to outgear it, like you're saying, it's
Yeah.
possible. Right now, from the damage values you're talking about, it does not sound possible in the slightest.
Yeah, and gear is hard too. Like I don't know how to gear still. I'll be honest. Like I know I gear
Everyone's
better than
learning,
most
dude.
people, but well, there's nothing to do. Like you're playing the lottery, right? That's like a weak part of the game for sure.
Is
Kind
that
of what makes
so?
that game like 8 or 7 for me. It's like there's no gearing. There's no expression of skill in terms of how you craft your items.
Which system, before we talk a little bit about Path of Exile 1, which system of crafting from PoE 1 would you prefer that they drop into Path of Exile 2 relatively soon, if you had your pick of the entire
Seven
litter?
Harvest, like Modern Harvest, yeah.
Modern Harvest?
I think
So
like in
not
PoE
OG
1,
Harvest.
no, absolutely not. I didn't even play that league actually. I skipped Ritual.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
I don't know. I was just I
You
didn't
didn't do
like I
like
don't
the
play that much
Maven
outside
race
the
or
league.
anything? Oh, really?
I didn't start racing until pretty late too. Like all of it is like really recent for me in terms of like really liking PoE because I feel like it was like one of those games. The more you like it, the more you play it, the more you like it. It's just like
Yeah.
constantly feeding its own cycle, right? Because the depth and complexity and the community with it is people feel like a lot of the streamers and stuff are like a little bit like harsh or like it just seems like kind of not even in that way, but it just feels like you enter the chat and your first time typing in like bench chat or like steel mage chat or something, um, like 200 people make fun of you if you ask a question. But if you sit there for an hour, you'll learn more than you probably would have in the rest of the time you have been playing the game. And I think
Yeah.
that that cycle of like constant learning and constant being able to like get that information, everyone actually wants to like share information because it's always developing. It's made PoE really rewarding in that way.
I,
Um,
you've hit it on
yeah,
the head. That's why I really like Path of Exile 1 and hopefully 2 so far. Yes. It's because every time I played, or every time I watched someone like a streamer, I always felt like I was learning something. And I like a game where I can invest that time into it and just constantly be rewarded year after year. It's not, I used to play a lot of Guild Wars 2, which is an MMO.
yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm sure you know. And I didn't feel that way at all. Even with Dota 2, I mean, kinda. But at a point, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on it. I just wasn't the best, right? I knew all the
Didn't look
different
like here.
interactions and how things operated. But with Path of Exile 1, man, I just constantly new things happen and it changes so often too. That's cool.
Did you do the PvE side of Guild Wars more or PvP side?
I did both. But
Yeah.
except so no world versus world. I did quite a bit of structured PvP and then a lot of PvE with my wife, like the raids and everything. Have you played?
Yeah, I saw the last tier. It was pretty good. I thought like the way they did the fight design. Like I didn't see like the hard mode of it or whatever, but I played during like on the launch day, and it was like because I have a couple friends
Awesome.
who are like streaming like Guild Wars streamers, and they're like the raid design is pretty strong. I think I like
Yeah.
that. That's the kind of thing that I kind of like to see like in a game, like the amount of dancing and movement and the coordination, and
Yep.
it's like there's like 4 or 6 different patterns that might appear on one mechanic. That's sort of the decision making that I like to see when it comes to boss fights. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Huge fan of the raids, especially I really like the first four. I think the very first one that came out, Spirit Veil with Sabbatha and Gorseval and the Veil Guardian, that'll always hold a special place in my heart because it was the first time that Guild Wars ever got difficult 10-man content. And I remember going in there and just spending hours and hours trying to learn these mechanics and finally downing them in that game after I'd played it for like 3 years or something before with nothing like this and these
so
characters.
rewarding.
Oh, it was different.
Yeah. Probably your question was though entirely, but
Oh no, you're totally fine, man.
oh,
Um,
crafting, yeah.
yeah, crafting. Yeah. So a little curious. We're almost at an hour. I said I'd
Yeah.
only keep that long. Thank you so much for chatting. I really appreciate it, Jung.
Cool, man. I appreciate what you're doing. Like, again, it's just huge, right? Like, I think like always having like more conversation, more discussion.
Yeah,
It lets you actually like, for me, like see what people actually think, and I think when people on stream, like you have a degree of insulation, which is both good and bad. From a will you talk and say what you really mean? But I think when you're able to talk to people, a lot of times it opens more. It opens my eyes to at least what people really think, and I think it gives like it allows me to build a bit more sympathy a lot of times for like, oh, I see why you've like are choosing to take this approach to this, or like
yeah.
like just in builds and like gameplay and stuff, and like the content creation side is always an interesting one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's only been positive. Like just everybody's opinions, talking to everyone. I feel I had my very first pod right after Path of Exile 2 came out. It was with Lighty, not Ben, but Lighty
Yeah.
Gaming, who does like an All for
Unique
One
guy?
series,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, yeah, the unique guy. He hated Path of Exile too. It was, I mean, it was the craziest conversation. After I'm on this high after loving the game, and I've never played that much of a video game in my life in that weekend, and I was really enjoying it. And I hopped on the pod with him, and he was like, "This is terrible. I'm gonna stop playing." And even then, like, I really enjoyed the chat. It was good, and
Totally.
he's playing Necro Settlers right now, which I cannot believe. But to each their own. To each their own. And speaking
Very
of that, Jung,
commendable.
I know you said you couldn't wait for 3.26. What do you think the future is going to be of Path of Exile 1? And I know this might be a little bit of a, I don't know, spicy or difficult question, because we know what Grinding Your Games has said. They're supporting both. But man, everybody really in the community has the sentiment, or a lot of people who are writing posts, talking, and my comments and everything. They seem very dour on the future of PoE1. From your perspective, I mean, obviously PoE2 has been very successful for Grinding Your Games.
Mhm.
Do you think they're gonna go back on what they've said? Do you think they're just gonna say, okay, well, PoE1 back burner, PoE2, you're the new favorite child?
I think from a predictive lens, from a descriptive one of like what is, if I had to like make a guess, um, I think that like I wouldn't be s- I wouldn't I think there's a 0% chance that PoE1 never gets another update.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the current league duration of 3.26, whatever part 2, is gonna be about a year. Because it's really clear, like, if you think just in terms of timing, like they want to release a new PoE2 patch for sure upcoming. The temporal stoop issue was a big one, and a lot of the skill bound stuff is really bad right now. So they want to do that, but they don't want to set a precedent of mid league nerfs. Despite, I mean, it is what it is.
Hey,
But
Jung, you answered that so professionally earlier. Come on.
I mean, I like it's like I just track it since 3.14. I think in 70% of leagues I've received a mid league nerf. To something I'm playing, and a lot of times it's just something I'm playing. Like it's not like specific, like it's not like a generalized build. It's so interesting.
How does this happen?
I mean, you choose to toe the line, right? I mean, I'm not like surprised. It just is what it is. But I think that when it comes to the new update, like let's say they want to release the new patch in February, which is what I think is going to happen, late February, where that means PoE 1's getting pushed back even more. Um, I think from a not like I guess like from a strategic lens, I guess I would personally think that they should be looking to like just gauge how things are with PoE 1. Because to be honest, like no one has information on it. A lot of their numbers recently have been both artificially inflated and deflated because of what they're doing on launch. Like they'll sponsor like Shroud to play for like 20 hours something in a row, right?
Yeah.
And they'll do weird things to their numbers for concurrence and stuff. And retention is why I think it's a lot of why a lot of people look at retention as their kind of core number. But I think if they like run it through one more time, see how it is, and probably like look to trim some of the stuff without doing an expedition type patch, but just like a lighter bounce patch with like one or two light pieces of content. I think it's gonna be a really strong release. But it's definitely like people should not be expecting a 6 month league. Even we were expecting 4. We were thinking November, right? Originally was gonna be the
Yeah.
next league.
Yeah.
I think a year is not unreasonable. Like
Wow.
I was really I took the last gauntlet really seriously because when I was talking to Alec before the gauntlet in LA, we are like properly messed up at night. And we are like just hanging out, and I was like, dude, last gauntlet, probably this time. Like it's probably like the last one we'll ever have. Like if you think about it, it's like yeah, probably the last PoE1 league. You know, it's a non-zero chance. So yeah, I'm kind of just like never take anything for granted, and because of that, I'm like yeah, it is what it is. But I think they really should try to gauge how things will be. You know, just like run it through one more time at
Right.
least. Properly
I think
release.
that's pretty measured. And honestly, I think you could be right, because from their pre PoE2 launch video, that night before video that they released, and they were like, "Whoa, we didn't think this was gonna happen. We're like at
Right.
a million units sold essentially. Like, what? This is crazy." They literally did not, which is crazy to me, Jung. They didn't expect this, and I feel like with the concurrence that have kept up until this very day, we're 200,000 plus on Steam. Nothing on standalone. I play on standalone. Lots of console players. All this drama, which we didn't even talk about, with the
Yeah.
biggest exposure possible for GGG from this dude who's just going bananas on social media. I
Dude,
mean,
what can I? just
Go.
that we're here, what's your like broad overarching take on like not like on the situation, but just like if someone just asks you like, hey, like, you know, because I've been getting, unfortunately I appeared in one of the videos. Like Quinn for some reason decided that it'd be a good idea to stick my face in his video.
Oh, I'm
Just
sorry,
like
bro. Oh
nonsense
god.
piece, like a very, very weird insertion of like this is what an efficient player does, and it's like shows me and then shows Ben, which is nonsense because I was like I was wearing like my like I have like a snuggie thing, and I was like just chilling out
Oh
trying to like
no, dude.
finish the maps.
Yeah.
Um, but then it's prompted like a lot of people I haven't talked to in like, you know, a year, 2, 3, 4 years. Just
Yep.
like, yeah, I saw you in this. Like, what's going on? And like, I think it's like, how do you feel about situation, the people involved, that sort of thing, just high
I
level?
I feel that it's a net positive for grinding your games because it's a lot of free exposure.
Sure.
Uh, obviously, they're also in a kind of a tough position because, from my perspective, I'm not an expert on all like the TOS and everything, but obviously some rule bending is going on here potentially. I won't say anything with assertion,
Yeah.
but I do think there are some, I guess illegal isn't the right word, but unsavory activities going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really sucks that that's what type of advertisement the game is getting. But I don't know what GGG do in this situation. You know, it's like it's a no win for them. Because honestly, the more Elon plays PoE2 or streams it on X or whatever, the more
Right.
crazy drama videos Quinn puts out that are getting 800,000 views in 3 days. Like you said, people are reaching out to you haven't talked to in years. Yeah, my
Yeah.
grandma knows about the Elon Musk PoE2 story, and she's just like on Facebook, and she
Right.
she doesn't understand what Twitch is, she doesn't understand what YouTube is. That's like a bad example because my grandma's never going to play Path of Exile 2, but there's a gamer out there that's like, oh wow, the footage on this game that Elon's playing looks pretty damn good. I might check it out. Okay, and that's great for GGG.
Right.
So my take on it is just like, I I think it's all stupid, but I think it's good for grinding your games. So I don't think they do anything about it really. What do you think? I'm curious because I haven't heard you talk about it.
I was just wondering what you thought. Like, not much of a political commentator, I take it
I
from
am
your side.
not a political commentator at all. No, no.
You're done. I don't know. I just
Are
thought
you? Are you,
it's
Jung? No.
no. I've left politics.
Good. Good. Nice. Are you in
Just
Canada? I didn't ask you. You were talking about
yeah.
Toronto. You are? Okay. Yeah. I'm in the US.
I used to work in on like I used to work in parliament, so I've like
Oh,
done work on a lot of sides of our government, and it's very different compared to like the things that are happening are like I'm always surprised in a very like it's almost comedic to me what happens a lot of times because I did a lot
it
of
is
like
insane
research and
to
stuff.
think that the next most powerful person in the US government is beefing with like Asman about PoE2 stuff. I can't believe the timeline we're living in. Like when I saw
Yeah.
the drama
Do you
this
see his
morning
DMs got
unfold.
leaked?
What?
Do you
Yeah,
see
I
Asm
saw
go?
the
Like,
DMs
what
got
is
leaked.
that?
And then did I before we got on, I was listening to the Asman video.
Yeah.
Asman was messaging with him last night
Yeah.
about PoE2. And Asman was saying, like, bro, you're flying too close to the sun with a level 97 character, lol. Maybe you should, not do that. And I
Yeah.
guess Elon was kind of, jesting with him. And then when Asman went to bed, he demarried.
Yep. It's crazy. I mean, like we have
I,
tons of petty things happen in PoE, but like
oof, he took a
people
new.
for the most part when like after taking a breath are just like that was fun, like I love that like whatever fight it was, whatever drama, it's like it's all kind of just like mostly under the rug aside from when certain things happen and people get banned. But
Mhm.
like to see like imagine taking the next course of action in that case, you know, taking the time out of your busy day and your busy life to I'm just trying to stay out of it, to be honest, personally, because like I'm worried. Taylor Swift came to Vancouver recently. Her concert was here. She ended her Eras tour here.
Oh, nice.
Tickets were like I don't
Did you
know,
go?
$50,000 each. Absolutely not.
They were what?
Yeah, it was like somewhere in that range. So I don't know. Maybe I might be off by
that's
like $1,000, but not by
that's still
much, you know.
crazy. That's crazy.
Um, but to see like what fandoms do for celebrities is very scary. So as a content creator, even though you do a lot of show content, I would always think first about safety at a very tangible and literal level. Yeah.
You are very right because I thought it was a very harmless tweet, about this a while back before all this blew up. I didn't even
Yeah.
tag anyone. I don't, gosh, at this point. Oh, yeah, I said, oh, I disagree, with Elon on something about PoE2. And somebody commented on it and tagged him And then he responded in my little
Uh,
tweet chain. I had to private DMs that day. You know,
yeah, check that
it
out.
is crazy. Like it's something. It's like it's a powder keg. You just can't talk about it. And then I did a brief mention in like a newsy style video about it, like a few minute segment, just talking about it, trying not to take too harsh of an opinion. And man, people they are polarized on that topic. They are.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, and like myself included, people will hear what they want. Like there's always what's being said, something in between, and then what people hear.
Mm,
And just, I think if like certain people hear something, it's not worth it. At the end of the day, like we're just having a good time.
yeah,
Let's just keep it that way. And I hope they manage things right, because if they don't, like it's just scary, right?
it is. It
Yeah.
is.
It's cool though.
Oh gosh. Well, that was pretty. That was an interesting note to end everything on, man. Now, I always ask everybody this before we close things out about PoE2. What's the one thing that you're most looking forward to be introduced? Like class, archetype, weapon, whatever, like campaign, more end game. I don't know.
Maybe I'm coping, but racing. I
Race.
mean, I want to see
Okay,
like PvE's great competition, right?
I
Like,
think it would be pretty dang cool in PoE2. Like just
yeah,
what type of race? So I know you did a pretty cool. Was it two Voidstones race, three Voidstones race a while back? I thought that was
yeah,
pretty
for sure.
cool. Like mid league. What do you think would be the equivalent in Path of Exile 2?
I mean, it's always corporate run, right? So like you think about it from if you're a sponsor sponsoring an event, like hours cost money, but
Okay.
also viewer attention costs something. And I think that trying to pin the exact duration for something is interesting. I think like to start out, it's gonna be a campaign race, or an Act 3 race, right? Like I don't think like we're looking at Arbiter Rush or anything like that. That's nonsense. And
Cool.
especially since the campaign is good, like
Yeah.
why not? The
Yeah.
only problem right now in PoE is that RNG is like really strong. I think like a good weapon gives you somewhere between 200% or 300% of your damage. So,
Hmm.
uh, but I think that do you play Smash Bros?
I do. Yeah. I play
Melee?
Ultimate. I've played Melee and
Oh,
whatever
okay.
was
Do you
on
have the
Wii.
doc?
Yeah. Say again.
Like the documentary?
No. No.
They released like the Smash documentary a while back. Like not like I think it's like GR Smash. I forgot who did it, but it's like a
Okay.
fan made documentary of just like the top players during esports at the time. And when the documentary came out, Melee's popularity like ballooned. It went from like a dying game because it literally is so old
Hmm.
to still to this day one of the most popular like FGC communities. Period.
Yeah.
Not like everyone on top, but like the fact that it still exists. And I think like Riot Games, for example, lose technically they lose hundreds of millions of dollars in esports a year, but it's a massive marketing scheme for them, right?
Right.
Like they make tons on it, like
Yeah.
because someone watches Faker at Worlds, they log in for the first time in 3.5 years, and then they buy like 40 skins. Unfortunately, no to these people, and I think that ignoring that option, like there's no downside to having. Well, there are, but I think the downsides of having a competitive scene and like offering that up and like creating those opportunities for grinding gear are far outweighed by like the excitement, the stakes that can be created, the feeling of like participating in competition. Even if you don't win, even if you don't place, like there's so many people that like always talk to me after gauntlet during progression, like about their experiences, why they like to compete, their like how it kind of reconfigures their understanding of the game and thousands of experiences in different ways, and you know, especially when you're old, how many more times do you have to compete? It gives just the opportunity to be amazing.
The stellar sentiment, man. I'd love to if they even brought back just those really short basic races that they had way back when I was nowhere near to playing Path of Exile 1. I think I would actually participate in those and try those, even though I don't think I'd win. It'd still be a cool experience, like you say. Like I did try the gauntlet. I got my arse kicked, but it was quite fun just participating in the community event and then watching everybody else play. If they had just those brief races, like maybe to the Crow Bell or something for a day where they ran like 10 of them consecutively and there were
Yeah.
even just tiny rewards, or just medals or shit like that on the forums. I don't know. It'd be really, really cool. I think that'd be awesome for the community. And like we've talked about a few times, our community is very large. It's very large. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty large. I think the community in Path of Exile is big and it's vibrant and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different voices and we're decently entertaining, I think.
Yeah.
Well, man,
Doesn't hurt,
this
man.
has been an awesome chat. Thank you so much for sitting down, chatting with me. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about with PoE2 or anything to say to the people watching the VOD or the live chatters?
Yeah. Patch notes just came out, right? And I think that if you stream more in these coming days, you're gonna get a lot of doomers. And for everyone that's dooming in patch notes, it's just a skill issue, right? If you see a patch note that directly affects you, just think of it as a new conceptual challenge. Just think of it as another opportunity to pivot into something else, to explore something new, to steal another Korean build. Like, it's always more fun. And I just think, don't let the doomers be too loud. I understand they're going to be there. I understand there's a lot of caution. Like, they'll be presented like, oh, like, I'm worried about this. But at the end of the day, hey, like, the more changes right now, the more fun the game will be. So, yeah.
Totally.
Cheers, man. It was good talking.
I totally agree. Thanks so much, Jung. I'll talk to you later, man. It's been great.
Have a good one. Good night.
Thanks.